On the up, confidence hits a 6-year high amongst Japanese firms 1 year on from Abe's overhaul of economic policy. And the long road ahead, Ireland's Prime Minister promises jobs and an end to tough budgets as the country regains control over its finances. Hello and a very warm welcome. You with World Business Report. I'm Sally Bundock. Also in the programme, we focus on our growing reliance on coal. But first of all, a year ago, Shinzo Abe returned as Prime Minister in Japan. Now, his bold economic policies were central to his appeal. So 1 year on, so-called Abenomics has the stamp of approval from firms. Business confidence has hit a 6-year high in the last 3 months of the year. Abe's three-pronged approach, his 3 arrows, have shown early signs of success. The first has been to effectively print more money, the flood of cash helping to weaken the Japanese yen and make their goods cheaper overseas. Now, a massive government investment plan is also helping to keep firms busy and get people spending. It's the third arrow, though, overhauling the entire structure of the world's third biggest economy, that may prove to be the biggest challenge. Our chief business correspondent, Linda Yu, has been to Tokyo's fish market to explore further.
Selling fish to the highest bidder is one of the purest forms of market forces at play. Injecting more competition into a moribund economy is precisely what Prime Minister Shinzo Abe wants. Years on from the bursting of the housing bubble, the Japanese economy has been stagnant for well over 2 decades. The big question is why? After all, banks are now back on their feet. The reason looks as if it's low productivity. So, in other words, not enough businesses like these which are doing a brisk trade. That is ultimately the goal of Abenomics. Can they turn around a stagnant economy with an aging population and make it vibrant again? Arigatou gozaimasu. Thank you very much. This sushi chef has been working for over 40 years and doesn't expect to retire anytime soon. With not just an aging but a shrinking population, Japan has a tough task in terms of reviving growth. But that's the main essence of the structural reforms of Abenomics. Can they use their existing people much more productively? And that does require firms to invest more and to raise wages. How to do that in a short period of time is ultimately the challenge.
Linda Yu, our chief business correspondent there. There's a lot more from her on our website. Now, another economy hoping for a reversal of fortunes is Ireland. Today, it regains control over its finances after 3 years of tough conditions imposed by international lenders. Deep spending cuts and hefty tax rises have made life tough for ordinary Irish people, prompting a new exodus to Australia and the United States. Well, late Sunday, Prime Minister Enda Kenny made a rare televised appeal promising to create jobs and prosperity.
By increasing total employment to over 2 million people by 2020, we can replace all of the jobs that were lost during the crisis with new jobs, offering many of those who have left Ireland the choice to return home. Creating more jobs will also improve our public finances and help to bring the era of tough budgets to an end.
Other business stories. EasyJet is back in the dock this week. It's accused of discriminating against wheelchair users in 2 separate cases. Today and on Thursday, French courts will hear legal challenges from passengers who were barred from flying unoccupied. One of the women had been flying to Portugal to attend her son's funeral. Last year, the low-cost carrier was fined €70,000 for refusing to fly 3 other wheelchair users in France. Better news though for one famous wheelchair user. Wolfgang Schäuble is to stay on as Germany's finance minister. Chancellor Merkel announced her new cabinet on Sunday. She told journalists that after 4 years in office, his name stands for Euro stability. Although popular in Germany, Mr. Schäuble is viewed less favourably in Greece and Portugal due to his tough line on bailouts for indebted Eurozone governments. A former top executive at UBS is due to appear in court later to answer charges that he helped rich Americans hide billions of dollars from the taxman. Raoul Vail was finally extradited from Italy last month. Following 5 years of legal battles, he had been the head of the UBS subsidiary specialising in wealth management and denies any wrongdoing. Hopes that a 3-month blockade on key Libyan oil ports was coming to an end were dashed on Sunday. Strikes and protests by local tribesmen have slashed oil exports from the country from 1 million barrels per day to just 110,000. The Eastern Autonomy Group is calling for a share of oil sales and investigation into corruption. From oil to coal, later today, the International Energy Agency looks set to say coal is crucial to meeting future energy needs around the world. Pressure to reduce carbon emissions due to climate change has done nothing to stop the rise in demand for the fuel. Increased investment in renewable sources of energy, such as wind and solar, have boosted capacity but remain too expensive to bridge the gap between supply and demand. Philip Hampshire has more.
At Thoresby Mine in Nottinghamshire, workers change shifts at one of UK Coal's 2 working deep mines. In Britain, the industry is much smaller now than it was in the 1970s and 80s, but for the world as a whole, coal is a growing source of where people get their power. Coal is as important to the energy markets as the next 2 areas of power production put together. Those are gas and renewables. But it's not only gaining in importance for fast-moving economies like India and China, it's also increasingly so for Europe and the United Kingdom too. The International Energy Agency says between 1990 and now, coal use for power almost doubled. Although coal's growth has slowed in the last few years through to 2035, it's still projected to remain the world's main source of power, even as renewables grow quickly and catch up.
The thing about coal that's still in the energy mix today, it's cheap. It's one of the fuels, one of the key fuels that is not subsidised. If you look at China, India, and all around the world, coal is in the ascent still. And in fact, even if you look closer to home, people operating under the same EU legislation that we are here in the UK are still not just burning coal, but they're building new coal.
Not everyone is happy about the increased focus in global demand for coal.
Greenpeace believes that the technologies already exist, that we could be going much further in cutting carbon pollution levels from the energy system. And whilst we are seeing staggering amounts of investment going into clean energy technologies already, the scale of that investment could be that much greater if the government started to take steps to close down the dirty options like coal burning and to give real levels of support, long-term certainty to clean energy investors.
Increased demand for coal is likely to remain a sensitive topic. Workers' jobs and keeping electricity prices low at the moment relies on continued growth in demand for the mineral. Those worried about climate change will continue to seek ways to make energy generation cleaner. Philip Hampshire.
That was Philip Hampshire there. Now we've got some bad news for Qantas. Rico Hizon joins us from our Asia Business Hub in Singapore with the details. Nice to see you, Rico. What's going on with Qantas?
Well, you have the flag carrier, Sally, being burdened with some major issues. Apart from facing record losses and rising competition, its alliance partner Emirates says that it has no plans in making any new investments in the beleaguered carrier. You have the president of Emirates, Tim Clark, saying that he is carefully watching developments but ruled out throwing a financial lifeline. And Sally, Qantas is also crying foul over an unfair playing field. The airline has long complained about Virgin Australia and its major shareholders, Etihad, Singapore Airlines and Air New Zealand, that they provide Virgin with access to foreign funding, thereby creating this unfair playing field. And you also have Prime Minister Tony Abbott coming to the picture, supporting calls from Qantas for a level playing field against competitor Virgin Australia. But at the moment, Qantas is being restricted by the so-called Qantas Sale Act, which limits foreign ownership in the carrier to 49% and requires Qantas to keep the majority of its maintenance operations in Australia. So a lot of problems for Australia's flag carrier. Sally.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Rico, here's on there. Now, before I go, let's show you the markets. A couple of issues on the minds of investors, not least the fact that the Federal Reserve in the United States will start its two-day policy meeting tomorrow. So there'll be a lot of speculation this week on the markets about what they're likely to do. Markets having a rough ride, Japan down despite that news about business confidence. We've had a survey out from HSBC today showing that Chinese manufacturing in November dropped to a 3-month low. It's an initial survey that may change, but for now it's seen as a negative. I'll see you soon as we look through the papers.